All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Illinois Green Party. I'm your host, David Rich. We have a very special guest on tonight, Kristal Larson. How are you?
I'm good tonight, David. How are you?
It's fabulous. Thank you so much. So, Kristal and I go back a few years. I actually had her on my radio show at least twice, maybe three, I think twice. And always a wonderful guest to have. Kristal Larson is the Avon Township clerk, right? Is that right? Okay. It's on a township level. I think people think of clerk as more of like a county level kind of thing, but that is not the case always. Um, and Kristal Larson is also the first trans female elected to office in Lake County. Definitely the township clerk.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Which is a huge step forward, not just for Kristal personally, but literally humanity. I'm not even kidding. Because it just shows that we are breaking down barriers. We are getting ahead, even though there's obviously a lot of pushback. And we'll talk about it a little bit tonight. Sorry, someone's just reading something. Yeah, so very, very happy to see you on the show. Somebody's commenting on it, and I don't understand what they're asking me. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show, Kristal. And so why don't you just kind of give a backstory as to like the trials, tribulations, the victories thereof of actually running as trans and becoming victorious?
It's kind of an interesting thing is that I tried to fly under the radar in terms of gender identity as being part of that election.
Okay.
I was who I was. I was running based on my qualifications, based on my history, serving previously as a trustee at Avon. So my understanding of township government, my connections within the community, it really wasn't about identity. I really didn't want that to be a thing. Unfortunately, right before Easter, my opponent made that.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, he came out and sent out a mailer to 2,000 or so folks, really focusing on attacking my gender identity as part of that mailer. I was very fortunate. We live here in Lake County. We have so much support for our LGBTQ plus communities here in Lake County. Everyone from the county board on down to all of the different pride groups all condemned the activity. And my opponent suffered the consequences of a loss in that election. But also, was, I hope, wise enough to resign on his own from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at Lake County, where he served as well, recognizing that he made a mistake and got called out pretty harshly for it.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I really haven't seen a lot of attacks. I haven't seen a lot of negativity. I see a lot of inclusion. I see a lot of positivity, generally speaking. I feel like I'm in a very fortunate and blessed area, whereas a lot of folks, even my colleagues in office across the country, are in some pretty scary places.
Yes, and I think initially I reached out to you this last time because Zoe from Montana, Zephyr.
Correct.
Okay, and what happened to her in the Montana General Assembly is that she got barred from being allowed to be physically present in the assembly hall, I guess they call it. She still has her legal jurisdictions as far as voting goes, but she has to do it all remotely from her office or I guess wherever. It's an unfortunate thing, and I know that we were talking before the show about the two gentlemen in Tennessee that had a similar but not same sort of thing where they got literally kicked out of their offices by the rest of the assembly, and then their caucuses stood up and said, "Okay, we need to replace them, so we're going to go ahead and pick these two guys." And so, which was a very clever political move. But it's unfortunate, and I tried reaching out. I sent her an email. I'm sure she's busy as all get out right now. But I sent her an email, asked her to come on the show, and she hasn't responded, and that's fine. But maybe we can get her on her here eventually. So you're saying it's pretty smooth sailing as far as that goes for you, like since you've been elected and been in office. Not much negativity, or if any at all, or anything like that. Because I wonder about that sometimes.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of people do. Like, we see what's going on across our country in states like Texas and Florida, Tennessee, Montana, I think there's 13 states overall right now where there's just some horrible legislation, more than 400 anti-LGBTQ bills, most of them focusing on the transgender community.
Yep.
It's absolutely brutal what's going on. And we live in Illinois. This is really a sanctuary state for the LGBTQ community. Our governor has a transgender relative. We have,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, we have very strong representation downstate, whether both from the allied community and within the LGBTQ plus community as well. We're well represented either by people who are part of our community or they're strong allies or have family members. And so Illinois has been really a haven and a very safe place. We've been very progressive in terms of ensuring and protecting and enshrining rights as opposed to putting them up on the table for discussion.
Yeah, that is good. It is. I mean, this is a Green Party show, so obviously I'm not a Democrat, but I was very happy when he won over Rauner, the last guy, because I can't imagine what would it be now if he was still a governor. Holy cats. Pot wouldn't be legal. I know that much. So, but no, like, I mean, seriously, like there's a lot, you're right. It's for the whole like anti-abortion thing, and the LGBTQ plus community. The protections thereof. Illinois is a very, very good state when it comes to the protections thereof, which is good. I'm glad to be here for those reasons.
I really believe that rights are not a political issue. They're a fundamental human right. It's not something that should be divided along any partisan lines, regardless of party. People should be allowed to be themselves and not be restricted by the government in that regard.
I 100% agree. My last show on this series was morality versus the law. And it came down to like asking I had Aaron Cartwright Weinstein and Max Wilbert, who's a huge environmental activist, his very existence is morality versus the law, doing the right thing, even though it's illegal, to protect the environment and so on. And at some point, the whole notion of rights came up. And I think most people think of rights as that which governments allocate to its citizens. And I'm like, no. A right is actually a moral allowance for behavior. And a right is a right because it's right. You have the right to choose for yourself who you want to be. Governments do not allocate rights. They tell you they do, but that's just all fraudulent. Just as false as like divine right of kings. There wasn't an actual divine entity that allocated, these rights to kings and queens. That's nonsense. But everybody acted as if that was true and went along with it. Same thing's happening now when they say, "Oh, the judge gave me this right." No, the judge doesn't have the right to give me. That's ridiculous.
He just protected it.
The only legitimate form of government is one that protects your rights. They don't allocate them to you 100%, which is happening less and less and less. Brian Lambert saying morality and the law rarely ever intersect. That is very true. Let's just remember that slavery was legally protected, folks. Okay, to put it in perspective. And because James Madison scribbled some stuff on a piece of parchment doesn't mean that we have to obey every word of it. That's stupid. Anyway, so there's my little anarchist rant there, my libertarian rant. Are you still hanging with the libertarians?
You know what? I still keep in contact with them, but it's very much, this is a small local office. I tend to be very independent from a lot of partisan views and party views. I hang my hat with the Democrats because that's really where I fit more closely than with anybody else. But it's like anybody else. It's like anything else. There's an independent voice that goes with that.
Sure. No, absolutely. So how about an update on what's been going on since you got elected to office? How's Avon Township going?
We've been doing some really good things here. We've expanded a number of programs for children. We've started bringing in programs for seniors as well. Our doors are constantly open. We have a full-time volunteer food pantry available now that serves the public. It's not a 501c3. It's not a political football anymore. It's a township service, which is the way it should be.
100%.
Yeah, so it's just serving people, which is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
And we continue to make progress here. We've done some technology upgrades over the last year. Put everybody on a modern platform, modern devices. Standardized some of those devices, upgraded security, upgraded how we work with our software, and have worked towards digitizing a lot of records. In fact, we've got a lot of the records I'm responsible for are now available online at any time. Going back through 2008, some of the smaller records, the like minutes and agendas, going back into the 1980s in some cases, continuing to build that and work through that digitization process it's been kind of a fun project.
Very cool. So, like, I know that is it townships specifically that are have to tend to their roads when it comes to like snow plowing and stuff like that, or is that different for different townships?
So townships do have a responsibility for road maintenance. It's one of the three main functions. We serve seniors, we serve youth, we serve those who are disadvantaged or in need of a hand up. We also are responsible for the assessment of property values, which is different from taxation. We're just responsible for saying, here's your portion of the pie, not how big of a pie and how big is the number.
What do you mean this is your portion? Like school financing and stuff, for like per house, what does that mean?
Right. So it's determining the value of your property, your real estate, your land, the two pieces that are still taxable in Illinois. We determine what the value of the property is, but it's all of the various bodies who determine what the tax amount is. So that assessment just determines your allocation of that amount. So think of it like you all go to the restaurant, you all go to McDonald's, and one person buys a 4-piece chicken nugget meal and one person buys 3 Big Macs. And basically it's just dividing up the bill to go, okay, the person with the smaller meal has the smaller portion of the bill. The person with the larger meal has the larger portion. That's all we're responsible for, is dividing the bill up. And then for highway maintenance, roads and highways.
Okay, interesting. Like, no, I just thinking of, like, as you're giving the McDonald's example, like how there's a friend of mine back in the day where you always go out to eat, and he thought that we should always split it equally. I'm like, no, man, you order like twice as much as I did. So you're picking my pocket, dude. And he told me to order more. I'm like, that's just a dumb solution. But okay, very cool. What's that?
Also, hell on the waistline.
Yeah, well, I didn't need any more food. But certainly, like, what are designated like township roads compared to like county roads? I mean, highways, I could see that's easy to determine. But I mean, like, what's a Fremont Township right next to me has Fremont Center Road, so I know that belongs to them. But like, what else?
It depends. If it's not a county road and it doesn't fall within the boundaries of a municipality, then it's probably going to be a township road or a state road. So, as you look at like a lot of the smaller side streets, some of the more in the unincorporated areas, that's where we run into it. So here in the Round Lake, Grays Lake area, Highland Lake is probably the largest set of small little roads like that we're responsible for. It's a pretty large community, but it's all unincorporated. So the township is responsible for those roads. There's a few other subdivisions as well throughout the Round Lake, Grays Lake area, a couple of common roads. And in some cases, we'll work together with other municipalities like Gold Lake or Third Lake or Round Lake. So we'll trade off a segment of road with them because we want to be contiguous when we plow to make it less messy and easier to deal with.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I know so you have your own like highway commissioner kind of thing, right?
Not here in Avon, although many townships do. Avon has less than 15 miles of road. And so we don't have a traditional highway department like most townships do. But we do still have a public works department with basically a highway supervisor. But he's not an elected role anymore. It's now a contracted or paid role.
Oh, okay, cool, interesting. Yeah, because I know that over here in Fremont, Alicia Dodd, who's the Fremont Township highway commissioner. Like she's got to wake up at like 2 a.m. when it's snowing and go out and start and not like drag.
Do that. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. Instead of being elected, it's somebody who's hired.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's a huge drag. But I thank God for, like, seriously, if anybody needs like a thank you for your service, it's those people, because I deliver pizza sometimes just for extra money, and I got caught in a blizzard one night and it was awful. I mean, awful. It's no fun when the snowplows aren't out and doing things. So yeah, but okay. So like, let me ask you this: is there any sort of like because this is a Green Party series? Is there any sort of environmental projects, processes going on in townships? Is that something that's kind of left to other areas of government?
There's
not. Call you out here.
There is some intersection with that. So
okay.
Townships do have, various open spaces they're responsible for. So we'll work with the counties to help preserve that open space, to work through environmental projects. We'll cooperate with different road projects, especially those that involve new walkways and greenways, so that we can make, Lake County, our areas at least, more accessible by bike, by foot, by alternative means of transportation. Here at the township, we have electric chargers that are available. They're only available for hours, but they are available for the public to use.
Cool.
We have a couple of those available.
Very cool.
Support Rych County with their fleet of electric vehicles, so they can charge their vehicles over here as well. That helps. And yes, we're talking about some initiatives with open space here at Avon, as far as being able to perhaps look at like wildflower or bee sanctuaries.
Nice. Yeah.
We just last year we finalized construction on an outdoor classroom, so that's
nice.
Be engaged outdoors instead of indoors.
That's
targeted towards the environment. So
beautiful.
And we're not the only township who works like that. Other townships certainly try to cooperate with those efforts as well.
That's very good. Now, is there a lot of networking between townships?
There is. The supervisors, for the most part, are the ones who do that networking and have that communication. At the clerk's level, that's not quite the same. And the trustees will talk back and forth as well. But we all network with each other, with different townships, to understand what we're all doing, what's worked, what hasn't.
Sharing ideas, so on, and okay.
Share ideas, resources, things like that. We also network with a lot of 501c3s to understand the needs of the community that way as well.
Oh, okay, cool. Very interesting. Townships don't have any legislative power or offices, right? Or do they?
Not really. Technically, we do have legislative offices. The township trustees, the board, are legislators. They do. Oh, okay. So there are certain actions they can take in terms of, leases, properties, property management, purchase, sale, high value assets, budget ordinances, levy ordinances. There's some road restrictions and things like that that can certainly be done at that level. But it's not like we can have burn ordinances to prevent burning, or the powers are extremely limited to whatever is written in the law at the Illinois level. Those are the powers we're allowed to exercise. It's a very limited list.
Okay. I know townships back in the day are actually what predated counties. And then counties kind of came into being, but townships stuck around because there were still certain duties that were more efficiently commandeered by townships, I guess. Is that an accurate way of stating it?
That was part of it. Part of it was that it was the most local unit of government, but it's also the most accessible to the people. So every year we have what's called a town hall meeting, and all the legislators, all of us executive officers, step away from our roles basically for the meeting. And the public runs it. They can put initiatives on there. They can call for ballot initiatives. They can compel and require, as the executive authority, the elected officials to execute their will, as long as it falls into
Wow.
the constrained list of things they can do too.
Sure. But I love that more direct democracy kind of thing. I love that. That's very libertarian and very that's very cool. Okay, so well, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I want to talk more about what's going on in the country. It's actually going on globally. You're talking about anti-LGBTQ plus initiatives, laws, policies, attitudes, behaviors, dispositions of all sort happening. I think it was Nigeria who just or Uganda who just outlawed homosexuality, literally. That's crazy. That's insane.
Yeah.
And what?
Again, there's countries
Again, yeah, they're known for this. And it's horrifying to see, and especially you kind of get this tendency when Trump took office and the massive amount of just white supremacy that came out of the woodworks, and I don't know if it was his fault or not, but I feel as though you can probably draw that connection pretty easily. When you have people like David Duke supporting Trump and the KKK and Proud Boys and Oath Keepers all think he's awesome, there's a reason why they thought he was such a cool guy. And you might want to pay attention to that. But anyway, whether it's his fault or not, it certainly seems to be more prevalent now than it was when I was growing up. Not that there was nothing going on, but I mean, certainly there was not like it is now. It's nuts. It's one of those things where you think that you're past it as a society, and then you realize that you're not. Like racism. I remember having conversations in the 90s where it almost seemed like to us, maybe it was because we were young and stupid, that racism was just sort of a passe, antiquated idea that there was some here and there, but it's not really that big of a deal anymore. And then boom, here we are. It's huge. It's just there's still residual effects of systemic racism and policing and oh my god, all this stuff. And I would just love to hear you kind of speak on that from your own personal perspective and experience as trans. What do you think?
That's a lot. Let's start. Let's talk about that for a couple of minutes. I could write a minute. I think when we're talking about what those rights look like, what that equality looks like, it's something I see even locally with youth that I work with even with the adults that I work with. We see this news, this never-ending barrage of attacks, this negativity. Whether we're talking about trans athletics, or we're talking about bathrooms, or we're talking about accessibility to, personal hygiene products, because we don't want to talk about gender with those anymore. Just they're hygiene products. End of story. We talk about, medications and all of these different, affirming therapies and discussions and giving people options, and the misinformation that's out there and the attacks. I see these kids who are out there who are terrified. They're afraid to be out in public. They're afraid to be seen because they're afraid they're going to be attacked, because that's what they see on national news.
Yeah.
What they see on social media. It's what they see on, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Take your pick. All these attacks, all this hate. And they're afraid, and it's causing issues. It really is. I've even spent basically the last 6 months off of social media just to avoid that, because it's so much. It's
a lot. It's a lot. You're right.
Every time you turn around, here's another bill taking away my rights. Here's another thing taking away, denying me a right that is actually mine, right? To talk to my doctor about healthcare.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
But then we see how those knee-jerk reactions spread into more misinformation the other way too. And it's, going to Florida as a transgender woman is not going to get me executed. That's not true. That's totally baseless but the idea that people are seeing it that way is scary.
Sure.
Right? The idea that people come to a conclusion that because of these 3 laws that were passed in Florida, it may not be safe to even walk on the street there. May not be that off, depending on where you're at in Florida, too. Depending on where you're at in Texas, depending on where you're at in different areas. Traveling in Illinois, throughout Lich County, throughout Cook County, throughout the collar counties, I feel relatively comfortable, but there's still people who will give that look, who will say something, who will stand up. I know I was at work over the winter, and I came out of the restroom, and some woman started screaming about me being in a restroom. And it's like, can we please?
You used the woman's restroom. She got upset.
Yeah, and it's just it's heartbreaking to go through that.
I know. I understand. I know.
It's the only way I can equate that is like colored people fountain or hippies use side door, right? I mean that's the same type of a reaction. Like you're using the wrong thing. You can't drink there. You can't go in that door. You can't be you, just because of who you are, and that type of identity assassination. Where we see one party predominantly complaining about cancel culture while actually being the force behind it is the most ridiculous thing.
Well, that's the same party that like says they believe in small government but want to like control your entire life. So yeah, no, I get you. They're just ridiculous party. They're both are, personally, sorry, but I think that the Republican Party is just absolutely wackadoodle nowadays, to put it lightly. Yeah, no, it is it's horrifying. You're right. Like with the bathroom thing, I don't see like besides a cultural discomfort, and I don't really care about that. Too bad. You grow up in a house with males and females using the same bathroom all the time. What's the damn problem?
So the problem is the 1800s in Massachusetts, where they passed the first law, and it's really interesting the background behind that. The first bathroom laws were passed as women came into the workforce to backfill for men because men were off fighting.
Right.
And everybody was afraid, oh my God, we're going to have to behave ourselves in the bathroom. No, maybe we should just give women their own.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it wasn't that they were really afraid of women, it's that they had to behave. And so
can't have that. You got to be able to, stand next to the other guy in the next urinal and, talk shit or something. I don't know. But okay.
It's also like, okay, we don't want him to hear us making the noises that we make in a bathroom. So.
Oh, you like and stuff. Yeah.
Let's just separate this, and then we spend billions and billions of dollars a year separating out bathrooms because a couple of old white guys in the 1800s said, hey, let's protect our ability to fart in a bathroom. Seriously. Can we grow up a little bit, please?
Can we please? Yeah, no, that's funny. I love hearing about the history of stuff, where it came from. That's interesting. Thank you for that. Yeah, so again, it is absolutely horrifying what's going on. Do you have any sort of soothsaying, any predictions about what do you think is going to happen next? I mean, because obviously, like on the federal level, the Democratic Party at least is getting a little extremely uncomfortable with this as well. What's going on? And there's like threats. This is more about abortion, but like the federal government was going to put some sort of space something or another in Alabama, but because of like now their anti-abortion laws are like, well, maybe we won't, and therefore you're not going to get all the jobs and money thereof. Tactics like that. You see a lot of times you'll see corporations pull stuff out of like certain states because of draconian laws like this. I think that there was some sort of professional sports championship that was going to be played somewhere, I think a couple of years ago. Sorry for being vague. But they said, sorry, we're not doing it because your laws are dumb. There's all sorts of pressures and things that people can do. Obviously, people with a lot more power than I have personally, with the money and the clout and so on. But I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Do you see any sort of like sun rising over these issues, or what do you think?
So, I mean, this is, again, looking at history, and as a clerk, that's something I like to do, is look at history, understand those patterns. And this is very cyclical. We look at the 80s, and it was, attacks on the LGBTQ community. We look at the 60s, attacks on the LGBTQ community. We look at today, they're right back again. Right? It's okay, who's the trendy flavor of the week to go past?
Right.
And then the attacks come, and then they go away. And we right the ship and we fix those things and we continue to make progress by taking 2 steps backwards and 3 steps forward and over and over and over again. And it's maddening, it's frustrating. It's a horrible space to be in when you're the victim of those attacks. Right?
Yeah, and
a whole new appreciation for what that feels like. Because before I couldn't possibly understand what that was. I couldn't possibly know what it felt like to feel the brunt of being attacked on a daily basis just based on my identity. God, I was a white man. I mean, nobody goes after us.
Right. I was just going to say, I've never really been marginalized in our society because I'm a white, American, European male.
Right.
Now in the 80s, I was a metalhead and I had long hair and earrings, and that didn't go over very well. But I mean, that was like, but I mean, it was nothing compared to like, the attack on the LGBTQ plus, nobody told me I couldn't use a bathroom. Nobody told me I couldn't have a job. Well, that's not true. Plenty of people didn't.
They just said you couldn't buy records.
Right, exactly. Unless I was over 18. And then, the PMRC came out and did all that stuff. But but anyway, just the notion of just restriction, the banning of lifestyles and behaviors, and the underpinnings, the philosophical, or I don't even want to like take philosophy down like that. Just the socio-political, economic underpinnings to like why a group of people would want to limit the behavior of other groups of people is something I always struggled with. I've always been very anti-authoritarian, and mainly for that reason. I don't understand why you think you have the authority to tell me how to live my life. That's ridiculous. What say you about that?
So, David, I think it's like this. When you have something that you're in control of, and all of a sudden it starts getting taken away from you, it's just human nature to want to lash out, to fight to keep what you believe is yours. And in some cases, it's believing your ideals. Right? When your ideals start to get taken away, we tend to lash out. Even your semi-anarchistic, rantings, like those are ideals. And when people are fighting against those, you lash out. We all do. It's human nature, right? It's really hard for all of us to go and put on our little Gandhi hat and say, nope, it's fine. We'll just let it happen.
That's the worst thing you can do. No, I agree with you, Kristal. It's just nobody's taking away, like, let's say, evangelical Christian's right to be an evangelical Christian and to get married and have kids and do that. Nobody's trying to take that away by adding liberties to abilities and capacities to other people. Nobody's trying to take that away from anybody else, but they feel as though they have to commandeer all of society because they feel threatened. But nobody's threatening them. If you don't want to, if you're against gay marriage, don't marry somebody of the same sex. If you're against abortion, don't have one.
But
okay, sorry. Go ahead.
It is a threat, right? If you open these up to other people, then they won't become those evangelicals. They won't be those people because they have other options. They're going to go and walk down a different road, right? And so we have to look at the theocratic nature of what that government's become, that control has become, because it's not about individuals and rights and the betterment of a country. It's about preserving a religious, a spiritual ideology, and
a theocracy.
Codifying that spiritual ideology. While our First Amendment says there's a freedom of religion, that freedom is not absolute in terms of being able to control the beliefs of others. And unfortunately, that's been twisted into, but my church has the right to do that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, Lauren Boebert from Boebert, whatever her name is, from I think Colorado, said was recorded as saying like, the church is supposed to like guide the government is not supposed to guide the church, and it was like, whoa, slow down. Even Republicans were like, no, that's not true. It was the first constitutional government that had the separation of church and state, and there's a reason for that. Outside of the Constitution, I think it was James Madison, who was the architect of the Constitution, the author, who said, I think it was him, who said that the American Constitution is no way based on the Christian religion. Like he specifically said it like that. That's almost an exact quote. So like I don't understand where they're getting this from. Not to mention the fact that most of the founding fathers were probably deists, which is a very diluted form of Christian. But okay.
But I think it's also relevant to go back even further, right? Let's go back, about 2,000 years or so and look at what Jesus said, which is repeatedly that there will be the kingdom of God on earth, but it doesn't replace the kingdom of man. It coexists.
Yes, there's
give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give unto the Lord what is the Lord's, knowing that both can coexist and both have their own different places to be at. He understood that. And if that principal deity, that aspect of God, that I'm going to go down that road, that polytheistic, monotheistic religion of three in one.
Yeah. Yes, the Trinity. Sorry, talking about three gods there, folks. All right, go ahead.
if that's the lesson that's supposed to be there, that both coexist. It's not a takeover of the world, because ultimately their place, the kingdom of God, isn't here on earth. So give it up. Don't worry about it. Walk your path here. Let others walk their paths here also. And God will settle it all in the end for you. You shouldn't be worried about us. Be worried about you.
Yeah, I understand. Jesus even said the kingdom of heaven lies within. Like that's a direct quote from, I think, John. But yeah, no, that's very profound. So yeah, it's very disconcerting and very problematic and annoying to hear people argue, like to want to impose their personal religious beliefs on people, other people, everybody else through the law. The law is supposed to be more objective than that. It's supposed to be not as culturally based as that, if it's worth a damn at all. And I think there are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene that if she had her way, she would put you in jail for not being a Christian. Like that's psycho.
Yeah, that woman is batshit crazy.
It's crazy. And she got reelected. I got to go down there. I got to go down to their tour district. I got to meet these people. I can't believe they exist. Holy cats, is she dumb? Anyway, yeah, you want to rant about her? Because you had a pretty strong reaction there when I just mentioned her name.
The woman's batshit crazy. She's nuts. She proves that anybody with a really big bank account that can fund a campaign and can spout the appropriate values for that area, anybody can be in office.
Right.
All you do is be able to get your face out there and pay for it.
Right. Exactly. But I saw one interview once, a snippet of an interview, really, like a street interview of a couple of people who voted for her, and they like her, they love her for some reason. Even though, again, going back to the Bible, it says that women are not allowed to have authority over men. But okay. But there's all sorts of things you can draw from the Bible. It is a 2,000-year-old document, at least. What's that now? Oh, I thought you said something. Yeah, she and Lauren Boebert, I don't know her. At least Lauren Boebert's cute. At least she's attractive. She's nice to look at. But her personality sucks. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't date her. But just can find some sort of superficial value. It's a mess. It's really too bad. And this whole thing with Trump going on now, we're sort of derailing and talking about just generalized politics. I guess that's okay. Like the civil suit that just happened, last week, and like my mom had over some Trump supporters the other day, and they seem to not care. I mean, you realize he was just like charged with sexual abuse, and she's like, well, that doesn't mean that he's guilty. I'm like, no, but it also doesn't mean he's innocent. I'm like, so okay. I'm like, it kind of raises the likelihood that he probably did it. I'm not necessarily no, but that's kind of a silly thing to say. There's very few things in the world that are necessary. Do you have any wackadoodle Trump lovers in Avon Township?
Oh, we've got a couple. Everybody's got the crazy uncle, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Right.
Right. And, we have them. They're all over the place. It's okay. I don't begrudge them their thoughts. I think they're wrong, but that doesn't mean I can step on their toes. I can try and convince them otherwise. But I can't say don't think that way because I'm not mine to control.
No, the best you can do is like sit down in an open forum of ideas and talk to them and try to reason with them. And no, you can't control. You don't want to control people's thoughts. That's icky. That's weird. But
But
reason people is perfectly acceptable.
yeah, I mean, I think we have those folks, like every community does. We don't have as many, or at least as many, who speak about it that outwardly. But we have them, and that's okay, right? They have a place in this world because they remind us, like, oh no, these are the reasons that we stand up for these values, that we fight for these values, that we try to preserve and enshrine our rights, as opposed to take them off the table and take choices away from people. We want to make sure people have those choices and those options.
Yes, exactly.
And so at least it's a good reminder of this is what we could be. Don't stop fighting.
Right, absolutely. No, that's very well said. I know that like during Trump's presidency, when he was like just destroying everything, Nancy Pelosi even like was concerned for the Republican Party that he was sort of spearheading the whole thing, because she even said like the America needs a strong conservative Republican Party, and that has to do with like political checks and balances, just on an ideological level. You need the other side of issues, and my issue as a third party member is that I think that duopoly is too much of a limitation. There's more than two sides, guys. Okay, there's all sorts of different sides, but we can talk about that another time. But yeah, so she even said that she was concerned for her political opponents, which I thought was very admirable for she to say.
But she's not wrong. I mean, there are plenty of Republicans, not Trumplicans, but Republicans that I work with, that I deal with on a regular basis, and we get along fine. We're able to talk about things. We're able to discuss the issues that matter at a local level in a perfectly mature and a perfectly dissenting way, without bringing identity politics into it.
Right.
And so there's a huge value to that, to people who can cross the aisle, discuss an issue maturely, and come to a resolution that's in the best interest of the people they serve. That's a beautiful thing. And yes, we do need that. And we need those differing views as well. I mean, just because the Green Party doesn't have a huge presence in government doesn't mean that we don't need those views. Just because the trans female community doesn't have a huge presence in government, there's 41 of us nationally.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Because we don't have a huge presence doesn't mean that our views aren't relevant.
Right. Exactly.
Same with the libertarians, the anarchists, and every other group you can come up with. I mean, if it works in Europe, it works here.
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you'll see politicians not do something even though it's worked elsewhere, merely because it's not American, which is a dumb reason. If it works, it works. If it's just I don't even know what that means. But okay, so we only have a few minutes left here. What tell us about? I know you said you're not as much involved now, but I think this is just a very exciting thing. I remember when you first brought it up on a radio show, I got really excited about it. Is the LGBTQ plus center that you wanted to have built in the Avon Township? I think in Round Lake, right?
Well, we hadn't settled on a location yet, but we were working on that. That is still the goal, to get that brick and mortar location to be able to serve people. The center has its first full-time employee working on outreach, working on communication, working on fundraising, helping to build that presence. We continue to provide support services to the LGBTQ plus community through support groups, referrals to affirming physicians, those who are able to work with the LGBTQ community. Stay in touch with the various hospital networks and physicians networks out here. Not just the therapists and the psychologists, but those who provide those actual services. The things that I've learned about medicine for the LGBTQ community is amazing. Like, I wouldn't have thought about some of these things before. Not just the trans community, but the broader community. It's specific things to our community. intersectional within our community as well. So we continue to gain traction to build support, work towards that. I've taken a little bit of a step back, but still do work with the support group, do work with the organization on a regular basis, work with some of the other advocacy groups in the state. But it's still a good push to get that brick and mortar to provide those services where people can go, they can feel safe, they can find the help that they need, or just a sense of community. I mean,
right.
We look at areas that have these centers and the sense of community that gets developed around those. Like, I mean, I don't know how long I ran around going, am I the only person like me? But, groups like the center, like, those cultural people that, once you find them, it's like, oh, look at all these people that are like me, that are, have same ideas and, at least same identity, where we can find some commonalities to meet and be able to discuss some of those things. Like, I mean, you're hanging out with to give a parallel, like you hang out with boys in the locker room when you're growing up, and you get to talk about things, and you get to learn, and you get to understand things about, okay, what's it like being a boy who likes girls? Right? There are things you don't ask parents, there are things you don't read in textbooks, there are things that you figure out. And some of them are mythically wrong, but you learn them. And it's part of your identity, and it's part of who you are as you grow up. But when you're part of an LGBTQ community, there's small pockets here and there, and you don't even know because people are afraid to be out. So having those centers, having those people, having that sense of community, we get to share those stories and go, oh, wow, now I understand why my boobs hurt so much.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, the identity, based communities is extremely important. I took a social psychology class once, which is different than a sociology class. It's basically why individuals enter into different groups, basically. The one theme that sort of ranged over all the different things we discussed was that people like and feel better with people like them. Now, there's all sorts of different ways of identifying yourself. You could be, like I said, in the 80s, I was a metalhead. So I hung out with other metalheads and I felt great doing it because music was very central to my identity and the way I dressed and everything else. Then you have like the goth crowd and the punk crowd and, the new wave crowd, all that stuff. And then you have even like linguistic identity, ethnic identity, religious identity, sexual identity, gender identity, racial identity. There's all sorts, and each individual is free to choose whatever they want to express themselves, and so to build structures for communities of all different kinds to come together. The metal heads, we have plenty of metal bars, we're fine, and that kind of thing. But the LGBTQ does not have a lot of options to get together and talk about those familiar and relevant and shared issues, absolutely, and experiences. I agree. I think it's a wonderful thing. This is why when I remember when you first told me, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. It's very excited about it. So I hope it continues on. I hope that it comes to fruition and manifestation because it's such a fabulous thing. It really is.
Oh, indeed. It's a great thing, and I hope it's a way that people can get together, they can develop that sense of community. But like any good American, it's a great way to get into capitalism as well, because you've got people in a shared community who are willing to, bolster that community. And, that brings up economic outcomes and positive economic outcomes for the community that struggles for those.
Right.
So, it's a community that can build on itself.
100%. And no, that's an interesting point about that's another reason why I was never understood like a capitalist, a Christian, whatever, I don't know, Christian capitalist opposition to any other type of community. Is like, well, they're going to buy, products specific to them and their identity. Like this is actually good for the economy. I don't like to use the economy as a reason for like moral value. That's kind of cheap, but it's true. I mean, they should have the right to do it just because they have the right to do it. But I mean, if I need to get into your pocket to convince you, okay, fine. That kind of thing. You wave money in front of a Republican, they change their mind. I'm sorry, I just don't think that they're a value-based party. I think they're full of shit. Anyway, so we're just about out of time here. Did you want to wrap it? Did you have anything you want to plug? Any events coming up or anything like that? Did you want to talk about so there's like we talked about, there's a third year of a Grays Lake Pride parade coming up June 10th, you said. Is that right?
Yeah, so there are events going on throughout June in Lake County, which are amazing. I know I believe it's June 3rd. Highland Park is having their annual Pride. June 4th, Buffalo Grove is having their annual BG Pride Parade. The 10th, June 10th is a Saturday. That's the LGBTQ Center is sponsoring the Lake County Pride Fest. That's moving to Round Lake Beach at the Civic Center this year. On June 11th, Grace Lake is having their third annual Pride Parade. And there will be events around all of these different things as well, like local establishments will be having their own little events going on alongside all of these major things. And then, of course, the 17th and 18th, we get down to Pride Fest in Chicago, and then the Pride Parade that final weekend in June. So, and then we've got things in other counties as well. So it's just great to see that, throughout the color counties and throughout the state, we're starting to see more and more of those celebrations, that sense of community. And it's a beautiful thing to see and witness and be part of.
Yes, it is. It's a wonderful thing to see, and I'm glad it's happening. But the fight isn't over yet by any stretch. Again, there's an onslaught of activity going on against the LGBTQ plus community across the nation, and that can't stand. So don't let your guard down quite yet. So Obsolete Optics, when's Reagan Parent Talk going to be on? I know who you're talking about. I think it's in 2 weeks. Just check the Illinois Green Party's Facebook page. You'll see Brian Lambrecht. Yes, you said you're the Debbie Quick. I'm happy another Green Party person got into at least local government. How about Central Illinois? If Debbie, thank you for watching, first of all, Debbie. But if you're referring to Kristal, she's actually not a Green Party member. She's very in allegiance with it and ideologically in a lot of ways, but she's actually a Democrat, which is okay. And how about Central Illinois? Well, Galesburg, the city of Galesburg has a Green Party mayor, Pierre Schwartzman. And actually, speaking of like the whole right-wing craziness and everything else, they're having their village board just turned right a couple months ago, the election, and it's causing a lot of problems. They have a city manager who they just hired before the election. He's African American, and now the board's threatening to fire him over really weird stuff. So people think it's racist based because their accusations are just very weak, and like you don't go from those accusations to like firing somebody. You might want to say, please don't do that again. Like there are a couple of very tiny infractions the guy committed. So they'll actually have the town hall tonight, and I talked to the mayor last night. Hundreds upon hundreds of people. It's probably happening right now. He's like, probably people are going to get arrested. There might be violence. I mean, like it's a microcosm of what's happening across the country. And it really is. It's just like the perfect example of what is going on in this nation. And it's disgusting. It's disturbing. I don't know what to say. And I hope that there's a new day will dawn, if you will, because like you said, the back and forth thing, the cyclical thing is very true. But at some point you just kind of get tired of it. Like, okay, enough, just enough. If you don't like it, don't do it. Leave people alone. How I live my life, this is how I live my life. I love somebody and therefore I support them, or I mind my own fucking business. That's about it.
Valid.
Okay?
Valid.
So that's fun. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Kristal Larson, thank you so much. I always love talking with you. And good luck with everything you're doing. I will be in touch because I think we need to get the local people together and just have a party or something. So the journalists and the local politicians, let's all get together and just gossip about other people. All right. So thank you so much for tuning into the Illinois Green Party series. I'm your host, David Rych. So next time, be good, be green.